They didn't just reject him that night. They erased him in front of everyone. Family, friends, the people who once said they believed in him. They laughed at his dreams. They said he would never become anything. And the worst part? The one person he trusted the most agreed with them. But what they didn't know was this. The man they pushed out of that house that night would return years later as someone they wouldn't even recognize. Before we continue, if you enjoy powerful stories about revenge, redemption, and unexpected comebacks, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because the story you're about to hear only gets more intense from here. It all started on a night that was supposed to be a celebration. Why is he even here? The voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Everyone heard it. A few people smiled. Others looked away, pretending not to. But no one defended him. Not one. He didn't react, didn't look offended, didn't speak, just stood there, like he had heard it before. Because he had, too many times. At the center of the table sat the man who mattered most, his father. Powerful, respected, feared. The kind of man whose approval felt like oxygen, and whose disappointment felt like suffocation. And tonight, he wasn't hiding it. "Sit down," his father said coldly, not as an invitation, as an order. He obeyed, slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned long ago not to draw attention. But attention found him anyway. It always did. "You've been quiet," his father continued, leaning back slightly, studying him, not with curiosity, with judgment. "Or is there nothing worth saying?" A few soft laughs, subtle, but sharp, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting. He looked up, just slightly, enough to meet his father's eyes. "I'm listening," he said calmly. That was his mistake, because calm, in a room full of people looking for weakness, feels like defiance. His father's expression hardened. "Listening," he repeated, then leaned forward, slowly, deliberately. "To what exactly? Success? To ambition? To people who actually became something?" Silence, heavy, intentional. Then came the final blow. "You've been given everything," his father said, "and still managed to become nothing." That one landed, not just on him, on everyone. Because now, this wasn't just a conversation. It was a verdict. And the room had already chosen a side, and just when it seemed like it couldn't get worse, someone else spoke, soft but clear. Maybe he just doesn't belong here. This time, he felt it. Not anger, not pain. Something else, something deeper. Because that voice was hers. The one person he thought wouldn't join them. The one person he thought understood him. And just like that, whatever was left broke. He didn't look at her immediately. He couldn't. Not because he was weak, but because he needed a second, just one, to understand what he had just heard. Because out of everyone in that room, she was the last person he expected to say that. And yet, there she was, sitting comfortably beside them, not avoiding eye contact, not apologizing, just watching, like she had already made her choice. And suddenly, everything started making sense. All the distance, all the silence, all the things she didn't say, when she should have. "You heard her," his father said calmly, leaning back again, satisfied. "Even she can see it." A few nods followed, not because they believed it, but because it was easier to agree than to stand alone. He finally looked at her, really looked this time, searching for something, anything, a sign that she didn't mean it, a hint of regret. But there was none, just a calm expression, carefully controlled, and that hurt more than anything else, because it wasn't emotional, it wasn't impulsive, Intentional. You think I don't belong here? He asked quietly. Not angry, not defensive, just asking. She hesitated, just for a moment. But in a room like that, even a moment speaks. I think, she began slowly, you've had enough chances. The words were soft, but they carried weight, finality, and that was it. Not the shouting, not the insults, not even his father's words. That was the moment something inside him closed, completely. Because when the one person you trusted stops choosing you, there's nothing left to hold on to. His father let out a quiet breath, satisfied. Then we're all in agreement, he said. And just like that, it was decided. No vote, no discussion, just conclusion. You'll leave this house, his father continued. Tonight. No hesitation, no negotiation, just finality. A few people shifted in their seats. Not uncomfortable, just adjusting, like they were preparing to move on from something insignificant, like this wasn't a life being changed right in front of them. You can take what's yours, his father added, then paused and smiled slightly, which shouldn't take long. A few quiet laughs again, but this time he didn't hear them. Not really, because something else had taken over. Clarity. Cold, sharp, unshaken. He stood up slowly. No rush, no resistance. And that alone made the room feel different. Because they expected anger, they expected pleading, they expected something, anything, that would make this feel justified. But he gave them nothing. He looked at his father, then at her, and for the first time that night, his expression changed, not to pain, not to anger, to something far more unsettling. Detachment. All right, he said quietly. And that was it. No argument, no fight, just acceptance. But not the kind they thought, because as he turned to leave, something followed him. Not defeat, not shame, something else, something none of them noticed. Not yet. But if you've ever seen someone walk away like that, calm, silent, completely done, then you already know that's never the end of the story. The door closed behind him, softly, but the sound lingered, not because it was loud, but because of what it meant. For the first time in years, he was alone, completely. No expectations, no pressure, no voices telling him who he was supposed to be. Just silence. Cold, honest, unforgiving. The night air hit differently. Not fresh, not freeing, just real. He stood there for a moment, outside the house that once defined everything, and now meant nothing. No bag, no plan, no destination. Just a man, with nowhere to go. And strangely, that didn't scare him. Not anymore. Because fear needs something to hold on to, and he had already lost everything. So there was nothing left to be afraid of. He started walking. No direction, no urgency, just moving. Streetlights passed above him one by one, each step quieter than the last, until the noise in his head finally stopped. And in that silence, something new appeared. A thought. Simple. Clear. For the first time in his life, no one was watching. No one was judging. No one was deciding his worth. And that meant, for the first time he could. He stopped, right there on the empty street, and exhaled slowly, like something heavy had finally been released. Not pain, not anger, expectation. And when that disappears, everything changes. Because now, every step forward is yours. Not theirs, not controlled, not influenced, just yours. The next morning didn't feel different. Not at first. No dramatic shift. No sudden success. Just reality. A small room, barely furnished. Walls that didn't know his name. A life that didn't care who he used to be. And yet, he woke up calm, not broken, not lost, focused. Because now, there was no one left to impress, only something to prove. But not to them, to himself. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. No shortcuts, no miracles. Just work, quiet, consistent, unnoticed. Exactly how it needed to be. He didn't talk about his past, didn't explain, didn't complain. Because the truth was simple. No one cares who you were when you have nothing. They only care when you become something. And that was coming, slowly, silently, unstoppably. And if you've ever seen someone rebuild their life from nothing, then you already know the quiet ones are the most dangerous. It didn't happen overnight. There was no single moment where everything changed. No sudden breakthrough, no lucky opportunity. Just progress. Small at first, almost invisible. The kind most people ignore because it doesn't look impressive, because it doesn't come with recognition. But he noticed every step, every improvement, every lesson learned the hard way. Because now, every win mattered. He worked longer, harder, smarter, not to prove anything to anyone, but because he finally understood something most people never do. No one was coming to save him. And once you accept that, you stop waiting. You start building. He took jobs others ignored, learned things others avoided, paid attention where others got distracted, and slowly, very slowly, things began to shift. Not dramatically, but enough to keep going, enough to see possibility. The small room changed. First, a better chair, then a proper desk, then something more. Not luxury, not yet, but progress. Real progress. And with it came something new. Confidence. Not loud, not visible, but solid. The kind that doesn't need approval because it's built, not given. Months turned into a year, then more, and somewhere along the way, he stopped looking back, not because he forgot, but because he no longer needed to remember. Until one day, something unexpected happened. An opportunity, not handed to him, not gifted, but earned. A project others had walked away from. Too complex, too risky, too uncertain. But he saw something different, potential, and for the first time, he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, took it, and didn't look back. The work was intense, relentless, demanding. But he didn't break, because this time, he wasn't doing it for survival. He was doing it with purpose. And that changes everything. Weeks passed, then months. And when it was done, it didn't just succeed, it stood out. People noticed, not who he was, not yet, but what he had done. And that was enough. Because recognition doesn't start with your name. It starts with your work. And now, his work was speaking, loud enough to be heard, even in places he once felt invisible. And if you've ever seen something like this happen, you already know. This is where everything begins to change. Success didn't announce itself. It never does. It arrives quietly. Then suddenly, everyone notices. At first, it was just recognition. A few people mentioning his work. A few opportunities opening. Nothing loud. Nothing obvious. But underneath, everything was changing. The small projects became bigger ones. The bigger ones became partnerships. And before long, he wasn't just participating anymore. He was leading. Not loudly, not aggressively, but effectively. The kind of leadership that doesn't need to prove anything. Because the results speak first. Then came the shift. The kind that changes everything. Not just financially, but socially. Because success doesn't just change your life. It changes how people see you. And more importantly, how they treat you. The same doors that once felt closed now opened, easily, naturally, without effort, because now he belonged in rooms like that, rooms that once felt distant, unreachable, irrelevant, and somewhere along the way, his name started to matter, not because of who he came from, but because of what he built, and that difference meant everything. Then one evening, it happened, not planned, not expected, just inevitable. He stepped out of a building, calm, composed, dressed differently now, sharp, clean, intentional, the kind of presence that doesn't ask for attention, but gets it anyway. And across the street, she saw him. At first, she wasn't sure, because the man standing there didn't match the memory she had. Not the same posture, not the same energy, not the same presence, but something about him felt familiar, too familiar. She slowed down, eyes fixed, trying to be certain. Then he turned slightly, and their eyes met, and just like that, everything came rushing back, not just for her, for him too, but the difference was, he didn't react, not the way she expected. No surprise, no emotion, just recognition, calm, controlled, like seeing a memory that no longer had power. She took a step closer, then another, heart racing now, not out of excitement, out of realization. "Is that you?" she asked softly. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded once. "Yes." That was it. No explanation, no story, just confirmation. And somehow that made it harder, because now there was no doubt. This was him, but not the same version, not the one she remembered, not the one she left behind. This one was different. And for the first time since that night, she didn't feel in control of the situation. At all. For a moment, neither of them moved. Not because they didn't want to, but because neither of them knew how to begin. Too much had changed. Too much had happened. And yet, here they were, standing just a few steps apart, like nothing had happened. But everything had. "You look," she started, then stopped, because nothing she was about to say felt enough, different, successful, better. None of it captured what she was seeing. He didn't help her. He just stood there, calm, waiting, not impatient, not curious, just present. And somehow that made it harder, because he wasn't giving her anything to hold on to. No emotion, no reaction, no signal, just silence. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said finally, a safer sentence, a weaker one. He nodded slightly. "Neither did I." Simple, neutral, but there was something underneath it, something she couldn't ignore, distance, clear, unmistakable. And for the first time, she felt it, the gap between who he was and who she remembered. "I've heard about you," she continued quickly, "your work, your projects." She hesitated, then added softly, "You've done well." He looked at her, not with pride, not with satisfaction, just acknowledgement. "I did what I had to. That was it. No story, no explanation, no attempt to impress her. And that was new, because before, he would have cared. Before, he would have wanted her to see. But now, he didn't need that anymore. "I'm sorry." The words came out suddenly, almost too fast, like she had been holding them back. And they finally slipped through. He didn't react, not immediately. He just looked at her, studying her face, not harshly, not emotionally, just carefully. "For what?" he asked, calm, direct. And that question caught her off guard, because she didn't expect to explain it. She thought saying it would be enough. But now, she had to face it. "For that night," she said. "For what I said. For how I handled it." Her voice softened. "I shouldn't have." But you did. He didn't interrupt loudly. He didn't raise his voice. But the way he said it stopped her completely. Because now there was no escaping it. No soft landing. Just truth. Raw. Unfiltered. She nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Filled with everything that had been left unsaid. I thought, she started, then paused, choosing her words carefully. I thought I was doing the right thing. He tilted his head slightly, not dismissive, just considering. For who? He asked. And that question hit harder than anything else. Because now, it wasn't about what happened. It was about why, and for the first time, she didn't have an answer. Not a good one. The silence between them felt different now. Not awkward, not uncertain, just honest. For the first time since they started talking, there was nothing left to hide behind. No excuses, no distractions, just truth. And sometimes, that's the hardest thing to face. She looked at him, really looked this time. Not at the success, not at the confidence. At him, the person she once knew, the one she walked away from. I didn't realize, she said quietly, what I was doing back then. Her voice wasn't defensive anymore. It wasn't trying to justify anything. It was reflective. I thought I was choosing stability, she continued. Security, the future. A small, almost bitter smile crossed her face. I didn't realize I was choosing the easy side. He didn't respond, but he listened. And that, alone, meant something. Because he didn't have to. He could have walked away, ignored her, left her with nothing, but he stayed. Not for her, for himself, to close something that had been left open for too long. I've thought about that night more times than I can count, she added. What I said, how I said it. She shook her head slightly. I wish I could take it back. And there it was, the thing most people wait for. Regret. Real. Undeniable. Too late. He exhaled slowly, not out of frustration, not out of anger, just release. I believe you, he said, and for a second, her eyes lit up. Hope, quick, fragile. But it didn't last, because he continued. But it doesn't change anything. And just like that, the space between them shifted again. This time, permanently. Her expression softened, not in pain, in understanding, because deep down, she already knew. Some things don't go back to what they were, no matter how much you want them to. I know, she said quietly. And that was the difference now. Before, she spoke without thinking. Now, she understood before speaking. Growth, but at a cost. He nodded slightly, not approving, not rejecting, just acknowledging. I don't hate you, he added, calm, clear. And I don't regret what happened. She looked up at that, surprised, because that wasn't what she expected. Why? She asked softly. He held her gaze, steady, unshaken. Because it showed me who I needed to become. No bitterness, no anger, just truth. And somehow, that made it heavier. Because now, she wasn't just part of his past. She was part of the reason he changed. And that was something she would have to live with. They stood there for a moment longer. Not because they had more to say, but because neither of them rushed to leave. Some endings don't need words, just understanding. She gave a small nod, not forced, not emotional, just acceptance. I'm glad you're doing well, she said quietly. And this time, it wasn't about regret. It wasn't about what she lost. It was genuine, and he could tell. Thank you, he replied. Simple, respectful, complete. No tension, no unfinished thoughts. Just closure. the kind that doesn't need revisiting. A car passed behind them, the world moving, like it always does, unaffected, uninterrupted, because life doesn't pause for moments like this. It just continues. And so do people. She stepped back slightly, creating space, not out of distance, but out of respect. "I won't take more of your time," she added. And for the first time you could but it. No expectations, no hidden hope, just letting go. He nodded once, nothing more, then turned. Not slowly, not dramatically, just naturally, like someone who had already made peace with everything behind him. And as he walked away, he didn't look back, not because he was trying to prove something, but because he didn't need to. That chapter was already closed. The house was quiet now. The same dining room, the same chair, the same table where everything began. But tonight, it felt different. He sat there alone, the man who once believed he had made the right decision, the man who thought he knew what strength looked like. His fingers slowly traced the edge of the table, memories returning. Every word he had spoken that night, every judgment, every rejection. He remembered the look on his son's face. Not anger, not hatred, just quiet disappointment. And suddenly, the silence in that room felt heavier than ever before, because for the first time, he realized something. The boy he once called a failure had become a man stronger than anyone in that house, stronger than him. And now, there was nothing left to say. No apology that could rewrite the past. No words that could bring back the moment he lost his son. So he sat there, in silence, finally understanding that sometimes the greatest mistake a father can make is failing to see the greatness in his own child. Sometimes that's the real victory, not proving people wrong, not getting even, but becoming someone who no longer needs to. He disappeared into the distance, calm, focused, unstoppable. Not the same person who walked out that door years ago, but someone better, stronger, defined not by what he lost, but by what he built. And just like that, the story ended, not with revenge, not with anger, just a man walking forward into everything they said he couldn't be. Because that's the thing about people who underestimate you. They never see it coming. They only see the result, and by the time they do, you're already too far ahead to look back. Rejection does one of two things to a person. It either breaks them, or it builds them. And the difference is never talent, never luck. It's a decision, one single decision, made quietly, made alone, to keep going. So if you're sitting with something right now, a rejection that still stings, a room that made you feel invisible, remember this. The same silence they used to dismiss you is the same silence you can use to build something they will never ignore. Because the world doesn't remember who doubted you. It only remembers what you became. And you are still becoming. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, the next one you won't want to miss. Because you never know which story stays with you. Take care of each other out there.